There is a place in the Arizona desert where almost 4,000 warplanes sleep under the sun. They were not destroyed. They were not shot down. They were not defeated. One day, someone simply turned them off. Fighter jets, bombers, helicopters, giant cargo planes. Billions of dollars in metal, engines, weapons, and history, all sitting in the dust. And most people will never get close to it. No crowds, no museum signs, no tourists walking between the rows, just silence. But here's the strange part. This is not just a place where planes go to die, because some of them wake up again. Some are stripped for parts, some are sent back to fly, and some take off with nobody inside the cockpit. Then a missile starts chasing them. Today, we are going inside the Boneyard, the most mysterious airplane graveyard on Earth. Just outside Tucson, Arizona, there is a military base that looks almost fake from the sky. Rows and rows of aircraft stretch across the desert like someone lined them up with a giant ruler. F-16s, F-15s, old Navy jets, huge tankers, cargo aircraft big enough to swallow trucks, helicopters that once flew into war zones. They sit there quietly, baking in the heat. Some are gray, some are faded. Some are wrapped in white, like metal ghosts waiting for someone to uncover them. From above, it looks beautiful. From the ground, it feels different. Because every one of those machines used to have a job. Every one had crews. Every one had a mission. And now, they are all waiting in the same place. The official name is long and boring. The 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group. But nobody calls it that. People call it the Boneyard. And honestly, that name is perfect, because it sounds like death. But the secret is this. In this graveyard, death is not always the end. Before we go deeper, subscribe to Aeropedia TV if you love places like this. Secret bases, forgotten aircraft, military stories that sound impossible but are real. One click helps the channel grow, and it tells YouTube to send you more stories like this. Because what happens inside this desert is not just weird, it is unbelievable. So the real question is simple. Why are almost 4,000 aircraft sitting in the desert? And why would the US military ever bring some of them back? The story begins after World War II. America had built more aircraft than anyone had ever imagined. Bombers, fighters, trainers, cargo planes. The war ended, and suddenly the country had a strange problem. Too many airplanes. Not useless airplanes. Not all broken airplanes. Just too many. Pilots came home. Squadrons shut down. War factories slowed. But the planes were still there. You cannot park a warplane just anywhere. If the air is wet, rust starts eating it. If the ground is soft, heavy aircraft sink. If the weather is rough, time destroys the machine piece by piece. So the military needed the perfect place. Dry air, hard ground, huge open space, and Tucson had all three. The desert air helps protect the metal. The ground is so hard that giant aircraft can sit on it without sinking, and there is enough empty land to line up planes for miles. So the first aircraft arrived. Then more came. Then more. Bombers from one era, jets from another, Cold War aircraft, Gulf War aircraft, planes that once looked like the future, all ending up in the same desert. And over time, the Boneyard became something much stranger than a parking lot. Now imagine this. A pilot lands for the last time. The wheels touch the runway. The engines slow down. The cockpit goes quiet. The pilot climbs out. And that aircraft is never supposed to fight again. So what happens next? If you think they just leave it in the sand, that is completely wrong. When a plane reaches the Boneyard, the real work begins. Workers inspect it. They clean it. They remove what can damage it. They protect the cockpit. They seal the engines. They block the places where dust, heat, insects, and animals could get inside. Then comes the part that makes the place look so strange from the air. They cover parts of the aircraft with a thick white layer. It is like sunscreen for a warplane. It protects the aircraft from the desert sun. It keeps dust out. It helps the machine survive years of waiting. And that is why some aircraft look like ghosts. White shapes in perfect lines. No pilots, no sound, no movement. just old warriors wrapped in white, waiting under the Arizona sky. But they are not all waiting for the same thing. That is where the story gets darker. Every aircraft inside the Boneyard has a future. Some futures are quiet, some are brutal, and some are almost impossible to believe. The first group is simple. Some planes are stored because they may still be useful one day. They are not ready to fly tomorrow. They are not on alert, but they are not dead either. They are sealed, protected, and kept in case someone needs them again. The second group becomes a treasure chest of parts. This is one of the most important things the Boneyard does. A plane that will never fly again can still save another plane. A landing gear part, a door, a panel, a control piece, a tiny part that nobody makes anymore. For some older aircraft, that part may be almost impossible to find anywhere else. But in the Boneyard, it might be sitting on an old jet under the sun. So one dead aircraft gives up a piece. That piece goes to an aircraft that is still flying. That aircraft completes another mission, and somewhere, a pilot comes home because the machine worked. That is the part people miss. This place is not just full of abandoned aircraft, it is full of second chances. But then there is the third road, and this one sounds like something from a movie. Remember what I said at the start? Some jets take off with nobody inside? That is real. The US Air Force takes old F-16 fighter jets from the Boneyard and turns them into flying targets. Not small drones, not toys. Real F-16s, full-size fighter jets, the kind of aircraft other countries still use as frontline fighters. Only now, the cockpit is empty. The jet can be controlled from the ground. It can take off. It can fly fast. It can break the sound barrier. It can turn, climb, dive, and act like a real enemy aircraft. Then another weapon system locks on. A missile is fired. And the old fighter becomes the target. Think about how strange that is. A jet that once protected pilots now risks its final flight so future pilots can survive. It sounds cruel, but it teaches something a computer screen cannot. A real missile chasing a real aircraft gives real answers. Will the radar see it? Will the missile track it? Will the system work when everything is moving fast? That is why these old jets still matter. Even when they are destroyed, they are doing one last job. The Boneyard does not just bury aircraft. Sometimes it sends them back into the sky for one final sacrifice. Now zoom in from the big picture. Forget the satellite images for a second. Picture one worker arriving before sunrise. The desert is still cool, but not for long. By midday, the heat will feel like it is coming from every direction. He walks between aircraft that once shook the sky. On one side, a fighter that may have flown over Iraq. On the other, a helicopter that may have carried troops through dust and danger. Farther down the line, a tanker that spent years feeding fuel to jets over oceans. To most people, these are old machines. To the workers here, they are jobs that still need to be done. Wash this aircraft, seal that engine, remove that part, check that record. Prepare this jet for storage. Prepare that one to be cut apart. Prepare another one for a different kind of final flight. There are no cheering crowds, no cameras, no dramatic music playing in the background. Just people working in the heat, keeping old aircraft from becoming useless too soon. And that is the hidden heart of the Boneyard. The planes are impressive, the numbers are huge, but the place only works because people show up every day and keep the giants alive. And now comes the part that makes the Boneyard almost unbelievable. Because some aircraft do not just give up parts, some do not become targets, some come back. Years pass, the sun burns over them, dust gathers around the tires, paint fades, people forget their names. And then, one day, the phone rings. The military needs an aircraft back, not for a museum, not for a static display, for real service. That has happened. One of the most famous examples is a B-52 bomber nicknamed Wise Guy. It had been sitting in the Boneyard for years. Most people would look at it and think, finished, too old, too quiet, too far gone. but the Air Force needed it. So crews went to work. They inspected it. They repaired it. They replaced what time had damaged. They brought the old bomber back to life. And after years of silence in the desert, Wise Guy flew again. That is the part that changes everything. Because when you look at those rows of aircraft, you are not just looking at the past. You may be looking at a future mission that has not happened yet. A machine that looks dead today may roar again tomorrow. In a peaceful world, the Boneyard looks strange, almost wasteful. Why leave so many expensive aircraft in the desert? Why not scrap them all? Why keep engines, wings, cockpits, panels, and old airframes sitting under the sun? But the world is not always peaceful. Wars start fast. Factories move slowly. New jets take years to build. Old parts can disappear from the market. And when a plane is grounded because one part is missing, that one small part suddenly becomes priceless. That is where the Boneyard becomes important. It is America's hidden pile of spare pieces. It is a desert full of backup plans. It is a place where old machines can still help new ones fly. A brand new fighter gets all the attention, but an old part pulled from a retired jet in Arizona might be the reason another aircraft takes off tomorrow. That is not junk. That is power sleeping under the sun. For years, people could take bus tours near the Boneyard. They could sit behind glass and stare at the aircraft rows. They could see the ghosts up close. But those tours are gone. Access is now much more controlled, and that makes the place feel even more mysterious. You can see the Boneyard from the air. You can find images of it online. You can know it exists, but you cannot really see everything that happens there. Which aircraft arrived last week? Which one disappeared from the rows? Which one is being stripped? Which one is being prepared to fly again? Most people will never know. Because even a parked aircraft can tell a story. A tail number matters. A missing aircraft matters. A new row of sealed jets matters. To a normal person, it is just a desert full of planes. To someone watching closely, every movement means something. The Boneyard is visible, but it is not fully open. And maybe that is exactly why people cannot stop looking at it. There is one thing you have to remember. Every aircraft out there had a life before the desert. A tail number, a crew, a pilot who trusted it, a mechanic who knew its problems, a mission it was built to survive. Some flew through storms, some crossed oceans, some carried troops, some carried bombs, some brought people home, and now they sit in silence, wrapped in white, parked in rows, waiting under the Arizona sun. Waiting for what? Maybe to be taken apart, maybe to give one last part to another aircraft. Maybe to fly without a pilot and face a missile, or maybe, just maybe, to hear engines roar again. That is why the Boneyard is so fascinating. It is not only a graveyard, it is a place where machines sleep. And some of them still have one more mission left. If this story pulled you in, subscribe to Aeropedia TV. Here, we do not just talk about aircraft. We uncover the places, machines, and secrets behind military aviation. The stories hiding in plain sight, the aircraft people forgot, the bases most people never get to enter, and the machines that still shape the sky. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, because the next story may be even more unbelievable than this one.